Hello, everybody. How are you going? Welcome to the Board Game Design Variety Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Dunstan, for those who don't know me. I'm an Australian board game designer, finally actually based in Australia, coming to you from Newcastle, which is a few hours north of Sydney, if anyone's familiar with Australia. And yeah, thanks everyone for dropping by. Those who might have known before, I did used to stream I started almost exactly 3 years ago. Must be something about November that gets me back into the streaming idea. And so I thought I would start up streaming again and kind of see how it goes. What I kind of like to do is talk about all things game design. I'm a full-time game designer, mainly in the tabletop space. And I like to kind of share my experiences and ideas. I love to answer questions if people have them. And generally just, help out with folks who are trying to get into that side of things or are just interested in what the life of a board game designer is actually like. So full warning, I run it in a fairly low-tech kind of way. So it's going to be a bit of a learning stream, I suspect. I haven't done this for quite a while. So bear with me, but thank you again for even dropping by and saying hi. And thanks for those in the chat who are saying hi. Hi, Daria. Nice to have you along. Fireflash, no worries at all. Fireflash is one of our fantastic, well, we call them captains, effectively moderators over at the Postmark Games Discord. Yeah, but that's right. Okay, listen. Hi, Susie. Nice that you're dropping by. And oh, it's Lee. Hey, Lee, how you going? Yeah, so that's the kind of nice thing. Oh, yes, thanks very much. It was actually my birthday yesterday, so I didn't quite stream on my birthday, but it was close. And hi to Board Game Geek. And actually, Lee, based in Sydney, another great Australian game designer. Of course, when I lived in Europe, I never got a chance to stream at this kind of time, or actually, I kind of did sometimes. I guess I stream sometimes in European morning time. But I thought this at least could potentially work for Australian audiences and European audiences. Apologies to any North Americans who might be watching this afterwards. Obviously, it's like, some stupid time in the morning, but can't work for everyone, unfortunately. Hey, Giannis, nice to see you. These are all these nice to see some folks from the first phase of streaming. I'm inspired by, I'm not sure anyone's a Doctor Who fan, but they've just announced that they're going to rebrand the new series as Series 1 again, even though it's like Series 14. Although, admittedly, that is itself a rebranding from the old series. So I can rebrand this as just, the new streaming era, but it's nice to have people from the old era as well. Hi, Jace, how you go? Oh, and thank you very much for the happy birthday. So, yes. What are we? Oh, yes, this is going to be where I'm going to have to, yeah, don't have any mods yet, so I'm hoping that we're not going to have too much spam, and hopefully they'll be sort of drowned out. I will try and play whack-a-mole while I can, and I'll see what I can do about that. Hi, how are you going? Ian's a great game designer and illustrator who I met in Prague when I lived in Prague, and yeah, it's really nice to be able to talk strangely through the medium of streaming. Hi, Christy, how you going? Oh, thanks so much for dropping by. Another fantastic game designer, Australian game designer that I got the pleasure to meet not that long ago. I'm kind of getting a bit used to the Australian scene again. Well, I say again, I 13 years ago when I left for the first time, it wasn't quite what it is now, and so I'm new to it as well. So everyone's been really welcoming, and I'm really glad about that. I'm just trying to find a way to block this person, but maybe it's not a huge problem. Anyway, okay. Hopefully it'll just sort of fall out of the chat, but if we've got any problems, I'll keep an eye on it. So yeah, I mean, I call it a variety hour. Sometimes I'm more organized than other times. But seeing as today was sort of the first stream, I try not to sort of get too ahead of myself. I wasn't sure if all the tech was going to work. So, but it seems like people can see me and hear me. Nobody's complaining of seeing a dark screen or something. So I must have plugged everything in right. It's also the first time I'm streaming on YouTube. but I'm seeing comments from YouTube and from Twitch. So hopefully all of that is working well. But as I always say, please feel free to ask any questions at any time about anything game design in the chat. Don't worry about what I'm currently doing. I think the most enjoyable thing for me actually is kind of answering questions and discussing things. I try not to have too much of a kind of self-prepared speech, otherwise it just feels like I'm giving a talk or something, which those folks might understand from during COVID. I gave a lot of talks where you were just sort of staring at a screen, at a camera, and you might be talking to hundreds of people, but you'd have no idea. Which of course streaming is a bit the same, but at least it's a bit easy to see comments. So I'm always happy to get any kind of interaction. So yeah, feel free to drop any questions anytime. Perfectly fine. But the other kind of things I wanted to chat a little bit about, there's a new, some folks might have seen earlier this week, there was an announcement of a new tabletop game designers association based in the US, which is sort of aiming to be a type of representative body for game designers, modeled sort of like a bit like a union, or there are other organizations that already exist. And I kind of wanted to go into that a little bit, talk about, I'd sort of, they had reached out to me a little bit earlier than the announcement. And so I knew about it for a little while, and sort of give some of my thoughts on it. It's been something that I've wanted to be involved with or wanted to exist for a long time in the English speaking world. So it'd be good. Hey, Rob, how are you going? Rob, half a great designer from the UK. And yeah, so thanks for saying hi. Drinking tea in the profile picture, probably the right thing for that time of the day. Yeah, I used to do kind of more, kind of like morning streams a little bit when I was in Prague, which is kind of probably when I'm a bit more awake. But I will keep with it as we are here. Yeah, well, so well, without further ado, I guess we can chat about that. Now, I'm going to try and share this thing, and I'm not sure. I only have one screen, so this might not work very well, but I'm going to try and pick it up. Okay, that's that. Now, oh, good. Okay, that seems to work. Okay. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Jeff Engelstein announced earlier this week formation of this new body called the Tabletop Game Designers Association. And as you can see, it's an organization basically that's going to support tabletop game designers. So for those who may or may not know, there's a very similar body called SAZ. I'm not going to try and, it's like Spieler Autoren something, which is like Game Authors Association in Germany, which has been going for a long time, I think several decades. And like them, with, you know, TGGA, the funny thing is, those in the Australian community, obviously it's a bit of an unfortunate acronym, given that we already have TGTA in Australia, but maybe, who knows, there'll be some, you know, side kind of publicity from that. They're sort of building on these three pillars, which they say advocacy, professional development, and community. And I think it's interesting that there's a lot of other kind of industries, I guess, which have these kind of professional bodies which aim to help their members and kind of represent them, especially when dealing with the kind of bodies that you tend to deal with. So as game designers, that generally is publishers. Most designers are pitching their designs to publishers, licensing those designs to publishers, and then they're hoping to you know, and then they have to work together effectively, and the publishers will set things like how much royalties they'll pay the designer for the use of their design, the kind of other kind of contractual obligations, how they communicate, advertising, all sorts of things like that. And so advocacy is really trying to act on behalf of the members of the organization, hopefully to, you know, raise standards, you know, collective bargaining with publishers. Maybe the SAZ in Germany has done a lot of work. They often work with a lot of the German publishers, for example, to try and set sort of like minimum standards in contracts, different types of clauses, and trying to get that kind of adopted across the board in Germany. And it'll be great to see something similar. In my experience, I've had I've worked with publishers really from all around the world, and there's huge differences, I think, in what's normal in, say, a North American contract versus, say, a European contract. And it would be great to see, some work to kind of, maybe hopefully raise the standards for everybody. Because I think the other thing that's really tricky is that in this industry, there aren't a lot of full-time game designers. So it's quite difficult, I think, to, if you're kind of new to the industry and maybe you've signed your first game, I mean, how do you know what's a reasonable kind of amount of, what's like reasonable in contract? How do you even feel like you have kind of any kind of power to negotiate with the publisher if is this a good deal? Is 5% royalties, is that reasonable? Who can I talk to about that? If I don't like it, do I feel like I have to kind of, and I've been in those situations, in that moment, you're much more worried about actually, like signing the game. You're not thinking necessarily about all the different contractual elements. And it's great to see that they have really thought about it in a kind of a really broad way. And I think that makes sense because actually, again, as far as I know, there aren't bodies for those other styles of games. And, there's obviously strength in numbers, I think. And in terms of the kind of work they're doing in sort of providing community, I think there's actually a lot of really interesting opportunities for cross-talk between those industries, because I think there's probably different standards. And more you see, there's going to be more crossovers in terms of like the styles of games made between, say, RPGs and tabletop or miniatures and that sort of thing. I should say thank you so much, Rory, for dropping by. This is Rory Muldoon, my co-founder of Postmark Games. If you haven't, if you're not following Rory on Twitter or wherever he is, do that. It's actually, if you'll forgive me, I'll go into a brief tangent, but actually Postmark Games kind of came out of me streaming the first time, a bit like now Rory, was generous enough to put up with my streams, or was happy enough to watch them. And that's kind of how we met, actually, kind of through chatting through. I knew some of Rory's work and his designs, and we kind of got to chatting about what we wanted to do, maybe our frustrations with, like kind of making smaller games that are a bit harder to pitch to publishers. And so if that's not an endorsement for streaming, I don't know what it is. But thanks very much for dropping by, Rory. Yes, and I'm not doing it the normal. This is also a normal time that Rory and I would have one of our Postmark meetings. It's normally Tuesdays, so I had to make sure not to schedule at the same time. I must say, and this is not going to surprise any Australians in the chat, one thing that I had to get used to, which I wasn't used to at all, were like time differences are so difficult when you live in Australia. Basically, I feel like I'm having all my meetings, after 8 p.m. and I'm not particularly a night person. So yeah, huge respect to anybody in the Australian industry, because it gets brutal after a while. And I've had too many meetings where you're sort of trying to get a European, someone in North America, and me in Australia, which always ends up being like 10 p.m. or something, and the North American is at like 6 a.m. or something. Anyway, that's beside the point. Whoops, no, that's not good. Yeah, that's better. Jason asks, do you know if TTGO will be worldwide? So as far as I know, it's going to be, and I should say that this is just a little bit of I don't know everything. I'm not organized. I'm not a member of the organization as yet, but this is as I understand it. The intention is to not be exclusive. It is initially based in North America, and most likely a lot of the members will be based in North America, and certainly the three sort of founding organizers, Jeffrey Engelstein, Elizabeth Hargrave, and Sang-Pong Lim, are all based in North America. It's definitely meant to be a sort of also hopefully kind of English-speaking group, again, kind of in contrast to, say, something like SAZ, which is a majority German-speaking group, although they do have other kind of subsidiaries for other countries, but they didn't catch on, and especially in North America, it never kind of worked, and that's what this organization is trying to cover. I think actually in Australia we're really lucky. I think TGGA does a really great job in Australia, but I think there can be a lot. I know that they're looking to kind of work with other organizations that already exist. So I think I would say that if you support what they're trying to do and you think you can get something out of it and you can kind of justify the money that you would spend becoming a member of the organization, it's a bit hard to know because it doesn't exist yet. But I think they're welcoming certainly anybody, no matter where you live around the world, and they're looking for ways to be relevant in multiple different territories. But I would say just kind of like keep an eye on it. I think there's a way you can kind of register your interest on the website, which is where I will kind of scroll down probably. Oh yes, these are the founders as I mentioned. Yeah, you can basically register, and you'll get more information when they kind of when they launch officially early next year. So I would definitely have a look at that. Hey Federico, how are you going? It's funny. It feels like a strange sort of what is it, like a one of those like when bands get together 20 years later or something. It's like the farewell tour. Not that I'm farewelling anybody, but Federico is another game designer from Cambridge, and so I'm getting people from the designer group in Prague, designer group in Australia that I went to not that long ago in Cambridge. So I'm really glad that it's kind of fun to have that bit of community around again. I do definitely miss those parts of in Prague and Cambridge. It was really great. Yes, farewell tour. We got to keep our mansions maintained. Yeah, if I can work out how to make money from streaming, then that would be a good idea. I don't think that's really going to work, but anyway, I mean, basically, and you can see some of the things that they're thinking that will be useful for members. Things like reviewing contracts, advocating with publishers. I was sort of talking about giving some guidance on what model contracts are, and then various sort of like discounts for various things, directories for publishers, seminars. I think this is all really useful stuff. So I would recommend. I have no idea how much it's going to cost, and I do recognize it's obviously very different. This is my job, so I'm definitely going to be a member. In fact, I think they may have already. I'm already on one of the lists of like designers who will support it, because I've said that I was sort of talking with a few other folk a while ago about something like this, and I'm so glad that Elizabeth Sen and Jeff have kind of like made it into a thing, because it's a lot of work. And I think I will be interested to see what it'll be like, but I would definitely sign up for more information, and I'll probably talk more if I'm still streaming in so many months' time. Sorry, excuse me. Then I will definitely kind of talk about what's going on, and maybe who knows, maybe I can have an interview with some folks from the organization over on the stream. Although of course with North America that's the hardest time zone, but I could probably do a morning stream here in Australia if I can. No, exactly. I think I completely agree. I mean, in transparency, when I first moved to Europe, I became a member of SAZ. They were always happy for people outside of Germany to join in. I think the membership fee was something like 50 euros a year, something like that. And there was actually a very direct benefit. When you're a member of SAZ, you got, and I don't know if you still do, you got free tickets to Nuremberg, the Nuremberg Toy Fair, which is sort of one of the largest trade-only shows. So Essen is obviously a huge game fair or a Gen Con, but they're kind of consumer shows like general public income. Nuremberg is at the end of January, and is at the end of January. Sorry. And it's not just games. Games are just one part of the big thing, but being part of SAZ meant you got kind of free tickets through that, which was very useful, which pretty much paid for, the cost of the tickets was about the cost of what the membership was. So I definitely used that, and that was very useful. But I have to admit, the rest of the organization wasn't so useful, although I think that was mainly kind of the language thing. A lot of the stuff they were doing were more for the sort of German language audience and that kind of side of things. I think they've got a bit better, but so I stopped being a member. So that's why I'm sort of really interested what's on the English side. Sorry, English speaking side. Boogie asks, what's the projected cost for this? This feels like a barrier for entry, and to even be a game designer now you need to be a part of this. Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. I don't know what the cost is going to be. I would just sign up, obviously sign up for free just to get notified and see what it's going to be like. I think, yeah, it's not going to be something that I would say it's not something you have to do. I think if you're, some parts of this, I think you can. I think there's also a source of information now. I think it's different, than it was 5-10 years ago. There are a lot more people talking about game design, and even the kind of more business side of it, contracts. I in my previous streams, I did talk about contracts, and I will do that again if folks are interested. So I think there are ways to get that kind of information. But maybe it's, if you can afford it, it might be one of the most efficient ways to kind of get involved with that. I also, I wouldn't be surprised. I have no idea if they have this kind of plan, but, it'd be great to see them kind of have, support ways for people to join if that financial barrier is really the thing that's stopping them. I've talked a lot, and I probably will talk a lot about on the stream about kind of the finances of being a game designer. And I think one of the most difficult things, and why we still see the kind of inequalities in terms of the kind of folks who become full-time game designers, is just that there's a lot of costs and kind of labor that's expected from game designers for free before they get any money. And this might be, unfortunately, another thing a little bit like that. But I would hope that I'm sure they're thinking about this thing. I think all the folks who are in charge of it, I know, are really adamant about improving access to people who would have financial barriers because of these things. So I'm sure they've sort of thought about these things. So I would look at that. And as Johanna said, you definitely don't need a member to be a designer. So I think there are communities, obviously, in Australia. TGDA is great. And as far as I know, this is where I check. I don't actually know whether I'm a member officially. I don't know. I mean, I think that's mainly through Patreon that you become a member of TGDA. Someone can correct me. I need to improve my knowledge about that. That's my fault. But there are kind of communities you can be part of, certainly for free. And I hope that this is kind of a little bit of a community. I hope that I will keep streaming. But that, I think any communities you can be part of. And as I said, there are certainly ones that are free. There are plenty of podcasts. And at the end of the day, I'm definitely a huge proponent of spending the least money as possible when you're starting that design journey. And yeah, it's certainly not a necessary thing. But if you think it would be useful, and I'll definitely, I think this is like we're seeing it when there's there's not much information at all about it, and you don't know it. And something like this is always going to be, something like this is always going to be a bit. It's going to take time to find its feet, basically. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. And it's nice to see something, but again, at the end of the day, it's also nice to see a body that's really focused on the kind of professional side of designers, and people who are, in a slightly kind of selfish way. I think there's a lot of resources there are more and more resources for people getting into designing, which is great. It's great to see, hopefully, some more support for people who are trying to stay in the industry, who are trying to kind of make a living from it. Because that's the other thing that I think there's still a huge gap between going from I've made a game and even signing your first game to how do you actually kind of stay in the industry? How are you able to kind of keep designing games? How do you actually make it a full-time thing or a reasonable amount of your income from that? So we will see. We shall see. Jason asks, you happen to be a member of the Australian Toy Association? I'm not. Are you? What's it like? Is anyone a member of the Australian Toy Association? I have to look into that. Schwallup. I'll try to say that. Yeah, $1 a month to be in TGA. And I mean, the other reason I kind of don't know is that I'm in the Facebook group, and there's so much great stuff in the Facebook group I don't think I ever paid to be in the Facebook group. So there's a lot you can get from TGGA even without supporting them officially, and of course $1 a month to get access to a lot of things. If anybody, Scroll Up or Permeation, want to tell me a kind of like, what do you think are the best kind of things that you're getting out of TGGA, the Australian Association, do let me know. Yeah, and it'll be great to, yeah, I'm kind of getting used to, I mean, I was extremely impressed. I went to PAX in Melbourne. For the European audience here, PAX is kind of the largest, I think, the Australians will correct me, largest kind of tabletop convention in Australia, but it has a huge digital part as well. And I was there for the first time for me in October. It was actually the same weekend as Essen. And TGDA run the sort of playtesting zone. For those in the UK, it's a little bit like Playtest UK, how they run at UK Games Expo. There's an area, folks have had to register beforehand to get the kind of their game selected, and then they have a space and they get a free ticket as part of that to playtest with the public. And TGA does work to a bit like I used to when it was in the UK, and we have something similar there. Part of the job of the organization is actually to try and literally get people who are walking through the halls to sit down and play test a game. You're kind of trying to spring. Rob Harper, who was a bit earlier, is the most amazing person for it. And TGA was also doing a really great job of that. So huge props to TGA and all the work they're doing. And yeah, if you're in Australia, definitely get involved with that, join the Facebook group, and look to support them on Patreon. Federico is saying, I think normally these types of associations come with a lot of benefits too, like talks, networking events, sometimes even access to lawyers. Yeah, exactly. I do know that SAZ has, for example, I understood they have access to a lawyer who can look at contracts and whether you get a certain amount of access to that for free as part of your membership or things like that. And definitely like what they're looking to have here when they talk about, the sort of stuff they're looking at, like discounts for different conferences and prototyping. So I think they're definitely looking to give value for that money. It's not just sort of a hollow membership for something. So yeah, I think they definitely think about that. Quoting Zelda, sometimes it's dangerous to go alone. Yeah, Yana says, it seems there are two big groups, an organization have to work for this at the same time, newcomers and established designers. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there is a kind of a commonality between those two organizations, which I think is, I hope, what they're going to focus on. And that is that aspect of, signing your game. I mean, ultimately, that is the same for both of those groups. And the kind of expectations and standards and tactics or how that works is the same. And both groups benefit from being part of that conversation. I think for newer designers, they get more power and knowledge, basically. Like, I think it can be very hard if you've never signed a contract before to kind of know what's normal. And for more experienced designers, there's a huge benefit in having as many people as possible kind of pushing the industry to go forward, because then it's easier for them, to really the kind of strength in numbers argument. So not sure if established designers. No, I think that's all I guess it's just like what percentage of game design or how important it is to your livelihood. This is my sole source of income pretty much. And there aren't so many people who do that, but it'd be great to see that number grow. And I think organizations like this will definitely help. Hey, Britchfield, thanks for coming by. SSN is currently €100, so maybe it's gone up a little bit since 13 years ago when I was a joint. They have a reduced fee of €60 for new designers, no publication yet in their first year. And for people that are struggling to pay, so about €5 to €8 a month. Yeah, okay. So they do sort of think about that kind of lower thing. Yeah, so I think that's good. And I also, if that's important to you, if you're interested in this new I'm not going to get it right. TTGDA, reach out and I think make your feelings known or kind of, and that'll be a great thing for them to sort of know, and hopefully they can sort of change their offering based on that a little bit. Does TGDA, the Australian group, Facebook group, accept foreigners? As far as I know, yeah. I think anyone. I would check. someone can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they're welcome to that. Again, I think it's with that kind of expectation of just being a good community member. But yeah, I think that's possible. Just try and join. I think there are probably, I imagine there are some questions that you just have to answer that kind of show that you're interested in design and you're trying to kind of just exploit the group for your own devices. But yeah, so that would be good. Oh, okay, Michael. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Michael. So I think the best thing is the PAX collab. So this is TD. I'm gonna have to cover. I mean, people have already talked about the problem with the two acronyms being very similar. The Australian group, I think the best that TGDA do is PAX Live. So yeah, that's the kind of like play testing, that you're able to get play testing at PAX, which is really great. And I agree. I was really impressed by how that ran and just seeing the standard designs and also getting a ticket. That's probably the other difference. Like PAX here is very expensive, I think, compared to Essen, which is not nothing, but it's not particularly expensive. That difference, it's a big thing. I feel like it's a big barrier in the Australian industry that like we have this big convention, but it's hugely expensive. So yeah, folks from Board Game Barbecue I know are organising PlayCon next year in Sydney, which I'm hopeful will be a really great convention and that designers can be a part of as well. And they have online testing on the Discord. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Schwallup, I got a shiny sticker next to my name in the TGA Discord, but mostly I joined to provide proof of numbers to government here, so that one day we'll gain government support for Tabletop 2. That is actually a very good point, and that's something I'm also getting a little bit more used to or sort of understanding. Is that for here in Australia, you need to kind of show there's a lot of people in the industry or that they're members of that kind of group, which is actually reminding me I should probably figure that out. So yeah, anyone who can support TGA, that helps us in Australia kind of potentially get more government support, because I know there is support, for example, for video game design, but not for tabletop. This is Dr. Tom. Okay, yes. Oh yeah, now it's today by coincidence. Oh yeah, no, thanks. It's it's a bit tricky on streaming because you just see people's if you don't know people's usernames, then you have no idea. But thanks so much for stopping by. Permission asks, is there, Michael, sorry, is there a body that exists on the publishing side at all? Well, Asmodee, shall I say? No, not as far as I know. I mean, in America, they have the Retailers Association, I feel like, but that's obviously more on retailers rather than the publishers. If there are any publishers in the chat, but as far as I know, I don't think there is anything that kind of exists on that side. Where he says the fringe benefit of something like that, so hopefully raise standards across the industry. As someone who has wrestled with an awkward publisher, you're saying it very kindly there, Rory. I also know the publisher in mind, and awkward is being very, very kind, charitable even. I welcome anything that gives us more credibility. Absolutely. No, I'm really hopeful. Yeah, sure. Oh, excellent. Yeah, Daria, join up on the. We're giving up all the clues here, so you need to know a sanger is a sandwich to join TGDA. I feel like it's almost like passing a citizenship exam or something. Sanger, interesting. I don't know if my wife is Czech, and I don't know if she'd know Sanger. That'd be interesting. She might not be able to be a member of TGDA. Anyway, but anyone who listens to the stream now, I hope anyone from TGDA is okay. We've given away the secret. Michael, another TGA benefit is that they have a booth and will sell your games for you at that booth, taking no cut except I guess that's the charging fees, like credit card fees. There you go. Once you're established, that's a good benefit. Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. As someone who, weirdly enough, I'm actually kind of considering whether I might self-distribute some games in Australia, because some of my own games aren't actually available in Australia, sadly. So I am actually tempted to see if I might try and sell some of the games which aren't already being distributed. But that would be quite useful for me as well. But I don't know if I want to deal with all the importing stuff. And yeah, I've got enough paperwork in my life as there is. There says, I love Postmark and your approach designing print play. I was the translator Voyages too. Oh yes, sorry. Now I recognize your username. I got into PvP game design thanks to you. I'm working to bring my game. Sorry. Oh, that's fantastic. No, I'm so glad. Well, I hope that, I mean, do put stuff in the Discord, and we'd be more than happy to give you some feedback. I've been really glad how, like, Postmark. I mean, we weren't the first people to do print and play, but I'm so glad that it is sort of sparked like a lot of new people making games. There was Shoes Tactics, which I think is from Vietnam. And I know they were a backer of ours from Voyages, and I know they were inspired from what Voyages did. So it's really great to see folks from other parts of the world kind of embracing. I think it's a great way to make games. Don't have to worry about manufacturing. So yeah, I'm so glad to read that actually. Yeah, definitely message me on Discord. Happy to take a look or give feedback. Absolutely. We're talking about the T2GGA welcome as well, but it should be absolutely free. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see whether they could have different like levels of membership. Obviously having a free membership with, I'm not sure if you'd expect to say get discounts to conventions for free, but there you could get some of the benefits for free. Yeah, I don't know whether, it's always a tricky thing because ultimately, I guess one of those things, if you think about a bit more like a union kind of side of things, which is sort of one approach to what it's trying to be, they do need funds in order to kind of act on behalf of their members. Lawyers aren't free, for example, if you're trying to, settle legal disputes, and that's a huge benefit. So, but I do agree it's really tricky. And as someone said before, it's not something, if you're a kind of a first-time designer, or if you have one game you really think about, it's not that important, and it is another cost when you're not getting necessarily a lot of income. But as someone who is full-time in the industry, it's a small price to pay, I think, for a lot of benefit. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I guess watch this space. And yeah, and I think all of these things sort of coming out would be great it would be really great to chat to one of the founders or multiple, maybe on stream sometime if people are interested. Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I'd say is that it is also tough trying to do any of these things. You're always doing it. It's like an extra thing on top of everything else you're doing. And I think I kind of applaud what they're doing. So that's where I'm sort of starting with. But yeah, I definitely appreciate the thing, and that's why, like, in a very small way, that's why I I'm happy to kind of contribute. Hopefully this is kind of a resource that is a very, as long as you have an internet connection, for example, that you can kind of experience, and you can be part of that community, trying to improve access in some small way. But again, a very small cog in the whole thing. Hopefully this is always kind of a welcoming place for folks. So, and thanks for everyone for sort of coming by so far, which is, it's always strange that I feel like I'm just sort of rambling for minutes. So yeah, anyone should just interject somewhere if I've just been rambling for too long on nonsense. There it says, print play gives me the chance to survive as game designer in Turkey, where we have hyperinflation. So thank you very much for showing us that print play can also be great. You can launch very popular crowdfunding campaigns. Well, no, I'm really glad that, yeah. And I think, we all, the access argument about always, I want to see game designers from all sorts of backgrounds, all different countries, be able to make games, publish them, make a living from doing that. Because I think that makes the whole industry better. We see better games, we see new games. That's one of the great things about having more people make games. So yeah, I'm glad that the print play stuff is going well, and I'm glad that it's sort of, I think there's like a good community growing up that sort of knows how these games work, and is kind of supporting them, and that's really great. As a small self-plug, I'd say anyone interested, do feel free to join our Postmark Games Discord server. There's always a lot of people chatting about print and play. There's Martin's Print and Play Hideaway on Facebook, really great Facebook group for print and play, the kind of print and play community. It's a really great place to chat about that. I'll definitely have a stream. at some point I'll stream about print play games, I'm sure, so we can chat about those in future installments of the Variety Hour. Jerry asks, do you ever join Spiel Essen or visit Europe? So I'm not sure if you knew, but I lived in Europe. Well, this will be contentious if we think of the UK as a part of Europe or not, but I lived in the UK for 10 years and in Prague for 3 years after that. So I'm actually just newly back in Australia, and I went to Essen every year. But I can confidently say yes, that I will go back to Spiel. Yeah, I think the plan will be to go next year. As I said, what is it like? Weather permitting and something else permitting. I can't remember what the saying is. Yeah, so that's currently the plan. Probably I'll go back to Spiel once every 2 or 3 years. It's a great thing to be part of. A huge privilege for me is once you sort of know publishers, the need to meet them face to face is a little bit less. I always think that like one of the most important things, and that's the huge advantage I had going to Spiel, was getting to meet publishers. It's so important in that kind of first meeting to be in person. I think it's very difficult to do that virtually, or it's just not the same. But after you have that kind of initial meeting, then you can do a lot of work virtually online and that sort of thing. So that's really helpful. But yeah, well, half my family, my wife's family, and my wife's from Czech Republic, so not very far from Germany. So yeah, I think the plan will be, if we go back to visit them, to do it around October, so I can go to Spiel, which will be very useful. I should say I've got about 15 minutes to go. Feel free to ask any questions, on topics I haven't really talked about, anything you like. The rough plan for the streaming is to do this at this time every Monday night at 8 p.m. Hopefully that time kind of works for folks. And thanks for everyone who has shown up. The stream will be available on my YouTube channel. It should be automatically saved there. That's all a bit of an experiment for me, kind of doing the streaming to YouTube. So yeah, if you miss the stream for any reason, it'll always be there for you to watch afterwards. And feel free to kind of like share and tell people about it. With the demise of Twitter, I sort of don't know how to do social media really anymore. I don't really know where I should be talking about it. So yeah, any help or any like telling people about it would be great. And apologies to all the TGGA people. I've kind of probably spammed your Facebook thing a little bit, so apologies for that. Thanks, Tegan. Oh, and happy birthday too, Tegan. Again, we are birthday twins that I never knew. I'm actually a twin. No, because are you also a twin, Tegan? I don't know why I think you possibly are a twin. But I'm a twin, so I have 2 twins, if that makes sense for my birthday. No twin. Okay, so we're just triplets. That's no. Jason asking, what are the games behind you? Yes. Oh, thanks. Somebody actually noticed. No. Well, you know how people have this is my very budget setup. I'm sitting in my dining room from a house we're about to get kicked out of, sadly. So what games do I have? And I was like, well, I have to have something in the background. So behind I have Next Station London and Next Station Tokyo. Great flippin' right games by yours truly. And this one's called Schnitzeljagd. Whoops, how do we say it? Yeah. Which is, in English, it's called Pray Another Day, which is a really fantastic kind of like very simple kind of bluffing game, which maybe I cover. This is not that, it hasn't been out that long, and it hasn't got to Australia yet. But I'm really happy with how this one's turned out. I'll definitely do a stream of talking about it at some point. But yeah, check it out. Pray Another Day. In English. Schnitzeljagd, as far as I understand in German, means scavenger hunt. Jason also asked, do you have a Substack? Very interesting question, because literally today I registered for Substack. I did have a newsletter, which I didn't really keep up with. But like streaming, I'm going to give everything another go. Yes, I'm going to try, basically. So I'm planning to try. I'm going to start a Substack. Anyone who knows me is I try things. I don't necessarily last at it. I'd like to get a bit better at that. So I'll definitely talk about it when that happens. I'm also about to hopefully have a new website. Finally, I'm going to be somewhat professional, maybe. Blue Sky. Folks are talking about Blue Sky. I think this is where I try and I am on Blue Sky, and I am kind of cross posting basically. I have to admit, I haven't quite got into Blue Sky yet. Anyone who's really enjoyed Blue Sky has found a kind of good way to use it. For me, it's felt a little bit, and I know that is what it is. You can't, like you're not going to start from the same number of people on Twitter, but it definitely kind of feels like I'm just talking to a handful of folks. But to be honest, Twitter kind of feels like that as well. So yeah. Christy has a question. Interesting. Weird design question. I'm working on an alliance system where I want to encourage learning, on who to align with to gain the most alliances quickly. Multiple alliances per turn. I'm afraid I don't quite understand what your question is. So feel free to reword it. Sorry about that. Or also feel free to just drop me an email or something. Happy to help. Sorry about that. Are you going to keep licensing game from other designers like Battle Card? So for those who don't know, Battle Card was the most recent release from Postmark Games, and it was the first time we released something that wasn't designed by Rory and myself. It's from David Thompson and Niels Johansson. Folks might know David Thompson, for example, amazing designer of Undaunted, a lot of other amazing games. Yes, the short answer is yes. I think Roy and I think, we're so glad how Postmark has gone. And Rory actually made a really touching tweet today about how it's kind of like he didn't know whether he might keep designing if it not been for Postmark. And I'm so glad about that because I love what Rory does. I'm so glad that you're still in the industry, Rory, and the Postmark can help that. But I don't think we expected it to become so much of our time, and we're still trying to balance like kind of running a company while also designing all the games for it. So yeah, having games from other designers definitely helps that. And the experience with Battle Line was really great. We were really surprised at folks being so kind of receptive to it. We were a little bit worried that it's very different to the types of games we made, but I don't think we ever imagined Postmark was going to be a company that would just make like one style of game. We really wanted to explore what could be done in the kind of print and play space. So the short answer is yes. We're working on the next kind of collaboration potentially. And maybe there'll be a slight Australian, flavor to the next one potentially. I'll leave a cryptic clue for that. Michael asks, if I may ask a question, how many games do you have to get published before you're confident you become a full-time career? That's a really great question. That is like a whole stream of itself. But the kind of short answer to that is, I don't know who. There was like some what's the word? Like metaphor or whatever for this idea of like being on a not a tightrope, like a trapeze. And the idea is like you keep swinging on the trapeze until you can jump to the next trapeze or something like that. But basically, the point was that don't make it your full-time job until you know it is your full-time job, if that makes sense. Like I effectively worked 2 full-time jobs for some time. For those who don't know, I was a research scientist as my kind of career before this. I was an academic in chemistry, and I only left that career formally at the start of 2022. Yes, I think that's right. Yeah, 2022. So yeah, I've been full-time almost for 2 years now, like completely full-time in games. But before that, I was effectively kind of had 2 jobs. And it wasn't how many games had to be published, it's how much money I was making, basically, because that's the thing about whether you can make anything full-time or not, effectively. And for me, it was when I was making enough money that kind of equaled what I was making from research. And obviously, when I stop doing research, then I take a bit of a hit. But the hope is that I have more time to kind of devote to tabletop. It's a really short answer to a much bigger kind of question, and I'll definitely like carry that on. And that's kind of relating back to what we were talking about with these organizations. It's how do you get more people being able to kind of do that? Because I would say probably the conditions in the industry are not very good to support people being full-time. Basically, it's very difficult. Yeah. Federico asks, is there a tabletop game design Discord you recommend other than Postmark? Button Shy is really great. They've got a new design challenge. Anybody who's interested, Button Shy has their 18 card design challenges. They've kind of restarted them, and they have one for this month, I think, which is design a game based on a holiday, I believe. So check them out, Button Shy. And their Discord server is really great. Really impressive. I think we tried to kind of not exactly model ours on theirs, but we were definitely inspired. We're inspired by a lot of what Button Shy does. Actually, I'm really impressed with that company generally. Other than that, Discords. I can have a very quick look on what I actually have in my Discords thing. No, I'm not a huge Discord user, but those would be the main ones I kind of know. Jonas says, I think the time zone thing is hitting you hard on Blue Sky because it's all posted chronological. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I guess I'm just in a bit of a minority. But that's I don't know. I like, it took me so long. I'm not much of a social media person, if I'm honest. It took me so long to kind of get the hang of Twitter. And it's just really sad. I just don't have much energy to kind of do a whole thing again. And I know a lot of folks are sort of talking about the advantages of how Blue Sky works. But for me, what I know there's a problem with algorithmic content, but it did at least help me find things kind of outside of my circle. And I feel like I'm not making those. Blue Sky just feels like I'm on Facebook or something, where I'm just seeing people I know talk about things I know about already. Twitter had that kind of discovered things you didn't know, and I haven't really felt that. And that was, for me, was a huge plus. Like from Twitter, I completely accept that right now is a dumpster fire, and I wouldn't recommend it. But that, I guess, I'm feeling the loss of that, and I haven't found that to sort of come from. Like something I've been wondering recently: what size game, if any, would you recommend part-time or newer designers try to work on? Perspective of getting them published. Are smaller games harder or easy to find a home for? Wow, lots of parts to that question. I think the first thing I would say, one of the most important things if you're starting a designer, is to finish a game. That's like one of the hardest things, because it's always difficult to kind of know when a creative project is finished, and you need to finish a game in order to sell it, or at least finish it to a point where you feel like you can sell it. So I would choose a game that is feasible to finish, and smaller games are easy to finish. Basically, there are fewer like moving parts. It's easy to know whether it's working or not. It doesn't take as much time to update it or work on it. I would always recommend smaller projects if possible. It's also the kind of thing that, if I'm starting a new collaboration with someone, I try to think of like, what's the kind of smaller project we can get working on, because we have to kind of learn how to work together. And it's the same if you're a new designer. You've got to kind of work out how you're going to make games and what that process looks like for you. And you need to go through the whole part of it, from start to middle to actually finishing the game. And you definitely see it's not necessarily always the case, because some people are more suited to making bigger games, and that's fine. But from my experience, kind of anecdotally, it's definitely easier to finish something with a smaller game. So I would recommend a small game. Now, a different part of that question is, which is easier to get published. That's like they're two different parts. And the only other thing I'd sort of say I'm not sure if it's a useful thing, but there's like one of those parts you can control, which is like finishing the design and pitching it to people, but you can't control it actually getting published. Like, you don't control whether a publisher will take it or not. And I would definitely focus on the part that you can control. So yeah, I'd be reticent at like putting too much stock in getting a game published. Obviously that's important, and there's lots of things, but like when you're just starting out, finish a game. That's the first task, then sell it. But recognize that those are two different kind of things. So we will see. Oh, it's Daniel. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's great. So thank you. Oh, it's great. Well, yeah. Yeah. So glad. No, thank you. I'm really glad that, Spielberg took the game. But yeah, I will say hello to Brett. Yeah, oh, that's great. Thank you so much for dropping by. No, it's really great. Oh gosh, sorry. It's so. Oh yeah, well, thank you for. I hope you can get some sleep soon. Yeah, and yeah, well, thank you for saying that it wasn't a complete train wreck, which is always good. Blue Sky is a big Discord server for industry people. Interesting. I haven't found that part of it. Maybe can you give me the secret code to get into that part of it? Because I haven't found that yet, Anthony. But do let me know. Christy, a Ludo Narrative Distance Discord for RPGs is good. Oh, great. No, I'll check that out. And yeah, thanks. That's a really great recommendation. So everybody, Ludo Narrative Distance, and they're kind of open to people joining from outside their group, I guess, just before people, you don't want to turn up and unannounced, I guess, if they're, I don't know how they're set up, I guess. Rory said, I think, so back to kind of social media. I think that's the issue with all those, these walled garden social networks. I made some great things on Twitter. Yep, likewise. Blue Sky is cool, but doesn't feel like it has the overlapping communities feel of Twitter. Maybe it's just a size right thing there. Yeah, I'm definitely happy to kind of give it a try, but I feel like it's this weird time where you're kind of, I don't know, you just feel like you're spinning your wheels a little bit, but I guess you sort of have to do it. Oh, thanks, Ian. Everyone, Ian O'Toole in the chat, the one of the greatest board game artists, illustrators, graphic designers, UX designers. Thanks very much for dropping by. I really hope one day we will get to work on a project together, I should say. Sorry, I'll just put that out there. I've already got to make a project together, Anthony, which is really great. Or the end of a project. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. Curious what industry trends you see coming in the next 1 to 2 years, particularly in terms of the kinds of games being signed and the kinds of games that will be successful in publication. You're the one who's supposed to know that. You're a publisher, not me. So you should tell me, and I'll make those games. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not good at that. Yeah, it's, yeah, I've not. I think. Sorry, I just got, like, what can I say, really? I don't even know what the industry trends are right now. Like, it's always like that thing that you see it, you know it when you see it. Yeah, exactly as Daniel said, if it was all that easy, we'd all do it. I think I think it's products kind of knowing what they are. I think having a really strong sense of identity and not being afraid to really do their own thing. Like, I think something like this, for example, which I really appreciate about it is, and it's actually not really even showing up here. Like, this is like fluo orange. Like, it is very weird when you look at it. And I know there's some comments about the game. It's all a bit weird. And like, why did they do the illustration? But I love it because I had kind of a really strong vision for the game. And it stands out and it's its own thing. And I think I really think that's something that's even more important than ever. Like, to think about, like, how do I make the game its own thing, whatever that is, not only just to stand out, but I think it like resonates with people so much more strongly than another, like trying to make something in the same area. It's not like, oh, this is just yet another narrative game, for example, or this is another place out. And I definitely think, I mean, I only know what I know, like, in terms of like things I kind of work in, but I always think there's so much room for simpler games. Basically, I think there's just, as board gaming becomes more and more mainstream, there's just so much room and so much untapped potential in games which are so easy to play and direct. And I think sometimes in design we get a little bit caught up with, I don't know, like alpha player problem in cooperative games, for example. Like, for those who don't know, alpha player problem is the idea in a cooperative game where one player can kind of like take over and tell the other people what to do. And there's a lot of things in design circles where you talk about, oh, how are you going to solve the alpha player problem, blah blah blah. But in reality, like, when people play the games, they don't care. They're not thinking about the alpha player problem. And Brett, frequent co-designer of mine, always said that just don't play with that person. Like, I think we overthink about it, and you lose making a game that's direct and for as wide an audience as possible. And I think think that's going to be a trend. I mean, it kind of already is a trend, but yeah. Blue Sky just meant that you're only talking to people that are hyperactive in the industry. Oh, head spirit. Yeah, no, that's a good point. No, it's true. I guess it's always that kind of like, what is it, the hockey stick of adaptation or something. We're at the point of like early adopters, which are going to be a certain type of audience. That's true. Yeah, we're all making. Jason asked, thoughts on the video game to board game trend. Very interesting you make this point, because I literally have just finished a prototype based on Luck Be a Landlord, for those people that don't know. If you don't know Luck Be a Landlord, got to check it out. A sort of slot machine deck builder video game for those people who used to watch me stream. I actually did stream me playing. It's the only game I've ever played on stream. I'm glad we at least one person in the chat knows what I'm talking about. It is incredible, and I am making. I'm making a game inspired by it, basically. Whether it's at the moment, it's not intended to be an actual license, but it's definitely inspired by that. I have not played Balatro, but I would like to try it. I think it's like a poker kind of roguelike-y kind of game. Federico asked, in terms of trends, I feel like two-player games used to be a bit limited in terms of getting published. Seems they've exploded a lot more recently. Specifically, two-player co-ops. Sky Team is great. Again, very interesting you talk about that. I'm currently working on a two-player cooperative game, and I agree. Definitely publishers are looking for that. I do worry it's a little bit of publishers kind of seeing what's like, specifically seeing Sky Team and going like, oh, let's try and jump on that trend when you've already kind of missed it because it's already happened. But I do agree that like two players is a space which wasn't kind of, it was always thought to be this very difficult thing to sell, and now there's a lot of opportunities to do it, which is great. And like even solo only games, which is always great to see. Jason's trying to make Super Auto Pets into a board game. Yeah, definitely. And like I really wanted to make, super hats off to Signers of Challenges for turning like the Auto Battler into a board game. I was trying to do that for a long time, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's great. So I think there's huge amount of rooms. I've talked about a lot of times, like Game Maker's Toolkit. If you haven't checked out Game Maker's Toolkit on YouTube, go there right now. Watch as many of his videos as you can. I think it's one of the most amazing kind of treasure troves of game design thinking and ideas, and especially if you're in the board game world, you're more likely to not have heard of the games he's talking about potentially. And I find it so amazingly inspiring, and it's inspired several of my own designs. Don't know if you can mention or not, but I love the two-player co-op you're working on. Oh, good. Got some fans already. I'm not sure if I'll have to talk to the others because it's a co-designer. But I know some great Australian designers I met, and are happy to have me on board to kind of work in the game, which I think is really cool, and I hope it'll make some progress. So yeah, who knows? Yeah, because sometimes on these streams I kind of share a little bit what I'm working on. It's always a bit weird. I never know what I can talk about. So usually it's stuff that's pretty early on in development. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think that we have run over time on the board game design variety hour, but so that might do me. But really, absolutely huge thank you for everyone for showing up, for this random person that you may or may not know, who's come back from hiatus. You've made it a very easy transition back, and I've actually really enjoyed it. Always a nice feeling to not feel like you're talking to yourself, even though that's kind of what you're doing. And yeah, I hope to be here. So the plan, as I said, every Monday evening, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is currently Daylight Saving Time, which is UTC plus 11. Obviously, those people here have worked out what the time is. But tell everyone you can find the recordings on YouTube. If you put in Matthew Dunstan, I hope my channel will turn up. And do feel free to message me on places you can find me about things you'd love me to talk about in the future, or you think could be a sort of topic for a whole stream, and we will do that. But yeah, and as I always say, do feel free to message me if you've got actual questions. If you're a designer, always happy to get those. And I try to respond as quickly as I can. Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic evening or a day for those who are just starting the working week in Europe. Hope it's all well. Hope it's not too cold yet. It feels very kind of wintry here. And yeah, I hope everyone will do well. Normally, I would sort of tell people to go to another stream. I'm not sure if anyone, especially on the Australian side, if they know a stream that I can suggest. But I think with this kind of dual broadcasting, it might be a little bit too difficult. So anyway, I will just say goodbye for now. And again, thank you very much. And see you next week. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.